In this video, we're going to discuss social norms and the three types of social norms: folkways, morals, and taboos. Norms are beliefs about how members of a society should and should not behave. We are constantly following norms even when we don't realize it. When we decide how to dress, we're following the norms of our culture. When we decide what to eat or how to eat, we're following subtle norms of our culture. Some norms are considered more serious, and so we actually enforce them through law, such as the need to get car insurance. Clearly, not all norms are the same. They vary in severity. The three norms we'll discuss in this video are folkways, mores, and taboos. So first, let's discuss folkways. Folkways are informal norms that are typically not codified into law or strictly enforced. Again, these are informal norms. If we abide by them or don't, we're not going to get punished. We might receive a sanction, but a relatively small sanction. We oftentimes follow these without even thinking too much about them. Consider a typical classroom. In a typical classroom, where does the instructor stand? Where does the instructor lecture or lead a discussion from? Most likely, the front of the classroom. Are there any rules or policies saying that the instructor has to be in the front of the classroom? Can the instructor be in the back of the classroom the entire time? Well, technically they couldn't be in the back if they wanted to. There's no policies against it, I assume. However, we expect instructors to lecture from the front of the classroom. If they lecture in the back, we might think something was a little off. We might be a little annoyed that we couldn't see them, that we couldn't hear them as well, that we had to turn our heads. While they're not breaking any formal rules, they are breaking the informal norm of a folkway. We follow folkways even when we are walking down the street. When you're walking down the street, or a hallway for that matter, and somebody is walking towards you, what do? Do you walk straight into them, or do you turn? And which way do you turn? Most of us, at least in America, will probably move to the right. Without even thinking about it, we obey the folkway of moving to the right. And if you don't believe me, test it out. Next time you're walking on the sidewalk or in a hallway and someone walks towards you, move to the left and see what happens. We do this awkward little dance. We get a little confused and flustered. We obey folkways oftentimes without even realizing it, and when we break these informal norms, we get a little off balance. Now, I'm guessing most of us have ridden a bus. Imagine that you're on a bus and you're the only person on the bus. Somebody walks on, where do you expect them to sit? Well, there's no rules about where they can sit. They can sit anywhere on the bus. But we expect them to behave in a certain way. We expect them to sit anywhere other than next to us. Or imagine if you are walking on a bus and you see one other person there. You sit next to them? Probably not. If we did, the other individual might think that we were a little off, might think that we're a little strange. Because even though there is no policy, there is no law for personal space, we do have a folkway of personal space. We expect people to give us our own space and not to be in our little bubble. And again, there is no policy about this. Somebody can sit right next to us, but we want our personal space because we have an informal norm attached to it. When someone violates a folkway, they won't be punished legally, they won't be fined, they won't be arrested, but they might still receive a negative sanction of a more subtle type. They might receive a bad look. Others might get angry at them. They might even get punished. But there won't be any legal sanction because they're not violating any formal rules. Again, folkways are informal. Next, let's talk about mores. Mores are formal norms that are enforced through law or policy. Typically, any law can be considered a more, although granted some, like jaywalking, we treat as a folkway. Laws, for the most part, are mores because we enforce them through the law. And we obey these all the time. We obey these while driving, hopefully at least. And if we break a more, if we violate this type of norm, because this norm is formal, the sanctions are more severe. We might get written up, fined, arrested. The sanctions with the more are more established, more official, because these are formal norms. But mores don't have to be laws. They can also be general policies. For example, policies at work. Every company will have a slew of policies that we are expected to hold to. For example, a common policy would be not to commit sexual harassment. If we violate a more at work, again, the sanctions are somewhat severe. We might get written up at work, we might get yelled at, we might even get fired. Notice again that folkways, because they are informal, the sanctions are relatively minor. But mores, because they are formal, the sanctions are more severe. And finally, that brings us to taboos. Taboos are formal norms that are held so strongly by society that the violation causes revulsion and or exclusion. These are norms that, when individuals commit them, we are set a little off balance. We don't know how to react. They are so far from the norm that we, or many of us, might not want anything to do with them. These vary in nature. They might be something like tattoos and piercings, or they might be something like incest. In fact, incest is considered a universal taboo because nearly every society has a taboo against incest. When someone commits these violations, it follows them for the rest of their lives. They might not be physically excluded, physically kicked out, but in many ways they are emotionally excluded from society. Keep in mind that these change across societies, or even in our society in the United States. Folkways, mores, and taboos change based on where you are. For example, incest, a universal taboo. Every state has a taboo against incest, has a law against incest, but how we enforce it differs state by state. In some states, we consider your second cousin incest. In other states, your first cousin. It varies location by location. Or with mores, also varies location by location. In some areas, speeding might be considered if you go over 55 miles per hour. In other areas, it might be 65 or even 70. Oftentimes, we follow these norms without even thinking about it. They seem somewhat natural. We follow them almost innately, but in reality, norms, like other aspects of our culture, are not natural, they are not normal, they are learned. And because they are learned, different societies teach and learn them differently. Not just societies across the world, but even subcultures in a given society. So consider for a moment how folkways, mores, and taboos differ. How do they differ not only from one another, but how do they differ across space, across different societies? How might a folkway in one society be a more in another? Now, hopefully this has opened our eyes at least a little bit to the issue of norms, and how norms, and our society, for that matter, affect us on a daily basis.